The Gemara said if a person does a sin of cooking the gid hanosheh, the sciatic nerve with milk, and he did it on Yom Tov, so there's many violations. We said there's the violation of the cooking basa b'chalav, meat and milk together, there's a violation of cooking on Yom Tov for no purpose. And there's a violation, the Gemara said, of making a fire. He made a fire, the Gemara said. And then the Gemara, and we'll get back to that, and then the Gemara said he also was a violation for eating. 2 violations for eating, because he ate the gid hanosheh. You're not allowed to eat a gid hanosheh. And he gets malkut for eating basa b'chalav. That's what the Gemara said. Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Is that Nathan?
Yeah.
Nathan is on. Nathan is fulfilling the mitzvah of Belech Lecha Baderech, of learning Torah when he's on the road. But I'm going to remind you, Nathan, that remember we have to make sure we say Birkat HaTorah before the class. Okay, Nathan's taken care of. He took care of it.
Chacham Nathan.
All clear.
Chacham Nathan. Yaron calls you Chacham Nathan.
All clear.
Okay. So the Gemara said, the Gemara wanted to know, how do you the way we're listening, and we said we have to remove making the fire from the list, because the Gemara said that you will not give him multiple sets of malkut, multiple sets of lashes for doing multiple malachot, multiple acts of work on Yom Tov, if they were all done in one act. So the Gemara said, therefore, we have to remove that from the listing. And now the Gemara wants to know, what are we adding to this list? We know there's the magic 5, so to speak. We don't do magic, by the way. Torah doesn't want witchcraft. You're not supposed to be magicians. Yeah, or at least those type of magicians, the black magic magicians. But so what are the 5? So the Gemara said. So the Gemara said we're now on 22a. Should be also 22a1. 5 lines from the top in the Hebrew. You remove the melacha of fire. Why? Because you cannot obligate the person for one act. Because on Yom Tov, we wanted to obligate him for making a fire on Yom Tov, and also you want to obligate him for cooking on Yom Tov, right? Cooking on Yom Tov. If you cook on Yom Tov for no purpose, is a malacha. Making a fire on Yom Tov for no purpose is also a malacha. We don't make a fire even for a purpose on Yom Tov. We only use a pre-existing fire, correct? We only take a fire that's already kindled from before Yom Tov, and we have a fire before Yom Tov, and then we light a candle from a pre-existing fire. Right? We don't make a fire. We don't take a match and strike a match on Yom Tov to make a fire on Yom Tov. We don't make a fire. We don't take wooden sticks together and make a fire on Yom Tov. So for making a fire, making a fire on Yom Tov for this type of basa b'chalav, for something that you'll not eat, is a violation of desecration of Yom Tov. So we have 2 desecrations of Yom Tov, 2 violations. 1, the fire. 2, cooking on Yom Tov in this situation for no purpose. So there's 2 violations in 2 ways. He violated the Yom Tov. But we said if you do one act, Nathan, and one act, and you violated the Torah, the Yom Tov, you violated, you desecrated Yom Tov in one action. What was the action? He made the fire. That action of making the fire, when did he make the fire? Right under the pot of the gid hanasheh with the milk. So when he makes the fire under the pot of meat and milk, he's also doing the malacha of what? Of cooking. How do you violate the sin of cooking? When you put on a fire underneath food that's raw food on Yom Tov, and that food is not going to be able to be eaten. There's no purpose because it's basa b'chalav. So in that one act of putting on the fire under the pot, he is doing 2 sins. He put on a fire for no purpose, made a fire for no purpose, and he cooking for no purpose. You see the 2 things that happen, Mr. Safdie? He's doing one act. He made the fire. But that one act the police could book him for 2 violations of that one act. What's the police?
So why you want to remove, Rabbi? Why you want to remove the fire?
The Gemara says we're going to remove we'll remove the fire from the listing. We won't give him the obligation for the making the fire. We'll give him the obligation for what? For making the cooking. I mean, the commentators ask why remove the fire. I mean, really, technically, either one you could remove. Either remove the fire. We're not going to book him for the violation of making a fire.
No, you can remove the cooking.
Or you
because
should
whatever he cook, if it's not, even if it's not Gilal Hashem, but it's not for Yom Tov, is asur. So whatever is going to be cooking is going to be regardless. It's going to be asur.
Right. So they do talk about this point. Why does the Gemara emphasize we're going to remove the havara? We're going to remove the violation of the fire. They do ask, the commentators do ask, I mean, technically, we have to remove one of the 2 violations. You can't book the guy for both violations in one act on Yom Tov. Because the Gemara says for Yom Tov, what'd you say? There's only 5 violations, the Gemara said. The Gemara is going to say there's 5. The Gemara is going to ask, okay, at this point, the Gemara at this point says there's 5 violations. That's the total. If you go ahead and you take this Gid HaNosheh, this sciatic nerve, the Torah says don't eat, and you went ahead and you cooked it up with milk. Now the Torah also said don't cook meat and milk together. And you did this on Yom Tov, which the Torah says don't cook something on Yom Tov for no purpose, because you can't eat this thing. So now you violated, Torah only gave you an allowance to cook on Yom Tov for the purpose of Yom Tov. So there's a lot of violations happening in this thing. And we said, now, if the violations are not connected to each other, for instance, cooking on Yom Tov, right? Or cooking meat and milk together has nothing to do with violating Yom Tov. I can't cook meat and milk together 365 days a year. So the guy could be obligated separate lashes for cooking the meat in together and cooking on Yom Tov something which has no purpose of cooking. Correct? But when it comes to the desecration of the Yom Tov itself, right? On Yom Tov, the Torah says you're not allowed to work on Yom Tov. Now, let's say let's say similar to Shabbat, there could be similar to Shabbat 39 around 39 types of ways to desecrate Yom Tov, similar to the way 39 ways to desecrate the Shabbat. Correct? There's many ways to desecrate the Shabbat. Plowing on Shabbat is one way to desecrate Shabbat. Building a building on Shabbat is another way. There's many ways. Cooking on Shabbat is another way. So on Yom Tov, cooking on Yom Tov for no purpose is one way to desecrate Yom Tov. Making a fire on Yom Tov for no purpose is another way of desecrating Yom Tov. Am I correct, Nathan? There's many ways to desecrate the Shabbat. There's many ways a person can desecrate Yom Tov. But the Gemara taught us yesterday that Yom Tov is unique, that if I do one act, and that one act carries with it multiple desecrations of the Yom Tov, in that one act, we're only going to book him for one punishment. We're only going to book him for one punishment, one set of lashes for that one act that had multiple violations.
So the one act is to do the fire on Yom Tov, and you want to remove the fire? Because by doing the fire, he did the cooking and he did the mix.
Right, exactly. When he did that one act, when he lit that fire under that pot, he did that one act of lighting the fire under the pot that had meat and milk together.
Two prohibition.
He did 2 desecrations of Yom Tov. The cop could write him up. He did 2 violations that are on the 2 set. So you would think that you would give there are regarding the holiday of Yom Tov, he desecrated it in 2 ways. How Nathan? Number 1, he made a fire on Yom Tov for no purpose. And we said we don't fire anyways, even for a purpose. We don't start a fire, right? We always have a pre-existing fire from before Yom Tov, and we light from a pre-existing fire, right? You leave the fire on before Yom Tov. That's how we do it by the Ashkenazim. I presume that's how you do it by the Sfardim, right? You have a fire on before Yom Tov, and then you light from the pre-existing fire. You strike a fire, make a fire. Here the Gemara says when he made this, when you make this fire from scratch, he is violating this prohibition of making a fire on Yom Tov. And he's also, at the same moment that he makes the fire, he's making this fire under a pot of meat and milk, under a pot, and he's also doing a violation of cooking on Yom Tov. This one act of making the fire. He's a creative guy. He does two sins, two desecrations of Yom Tov in this one act. And we say we're not going to give him 2 sets of lashes regarding Yom Tov. For violating Yom Tov twice in this one act, we give him what? 1 set of lashes. So the Gemara says we're going to give him the set of the lashes for the cooking aspect that he did. But really, the commentators say, really, why does the Gemara choose that we'll give him the lashes for the cooking more than making for the fire? Okay, maybe on Monday we'll address that point.
Rabbi, maybe because the Gemara is going to say that he didn't really make a new fire.
Okay, let's see what the Gemara is going to say. So now the Gemara says, 5 lines to the top. Ela apik havara, remove the fire, and what do we put in? We are on 22a. In the art scroll, it's 22a, and it's on the bottom column. On the first column, the last words in the English, Ela apik havara. See the first column, column A, 22A1. Ela apik havara, remove havara. And we're going to put in the violation of taking wood of an idol of a tree, a Shera tree. This is a tree that they used to worship. And, there used to be a great desire for idolatry, for worshiping idols. We don't understand. We look at an idol. How do they bow down? They make an idol, a Buddha, all these things, and they bow down, they service it, they bring ketoret to it. I should say even the word ketoret. They make incense to it. How do we don't understand that? But that's because the rabbis had prayed to remove the desire for idolatry, and therefore that desire, we don't have that desire anymore. What? Right. So because the world is not suffering majorly from serving idols. The world is suffering majorly from other issues in the world, for a lot of the liberal ideas that are ruining the world today. So that is what the world is suffering from. But in the old days, there was a great desire for idolatry. And we explained a lot of our Gemaras, we explained before that the Torah prohibits making a tattoo. The Torah prohibits certain razor shaves. A razor shave, and I'll do a razor shave, and also shaving the side of the head. We saw also that the Rambam says that was all connected to idolatry. This is one of the ways of the tattoo was one of the ways they would show the connection to the idol, the type of haircut, the way they would style of the hair. We saw that there's something called tanshur. I don't know if you were, where it's until 1970, only in 1972 did the Pope did they tell them no more doing these type of haircuts. Till 72, for thousands of years, the Christians would make these, not Christians, whatever. They're not these people who worship these. They would cut their hair over here. Yeah. No, the side. They made their head round. They would cut their hair right over here, and they would cut, nothing over here. They would take off their sideburns. Or maybe okay. So that's how they would do it, and that was also part of their connection to idols. And this is the way they would. The priests would and the Torah. That's what the Torah says. We can't round our head. And that's by the reason why we don't shave the sideburns, because the Torah says don't make your head round, and if you shave the sideburns, so people have to be very careful when they go to the barber. You know what? You want to get a short haircut, but not in this area. This area, Torah says you're not allowed to make round the corner. This is the corner of your head. We learned about it, and you can't. Therefore, we tell people at least a 2. You tell the barber
number three.
I recommend a 3. The 3 is better. Okay, so some say just grabbing it is enough, but if you do a 0 or a 1 is not enough. You got to get at least a 2. At least a 2. Tell the guy you want a 2 over here. I saw listed in the number, in the yeshiva, Rabbi David Feinstein, they have on the wall. One of the Kola members wrote up about this. I'm pretty sure he wrote a 2 should be good. I like a 3 better, but 2 should be good also. So but someone told me yesterday, he goes in, someone who's not so knowledgeable, he gets a 0. He gets a 0. He really shaved off his sideburns. Good morning, Mr. Haber. Right over here, this area over here. If you make a line from this area, this is called the corner of your head. You tell the guy, the barber, anytime anything you do in this area, he shouldn't cut too close in this area. That's why you should use the 2 or maybe a 3 in that area. So, and the Chafetz Chaim himself, in Simmeration and Aleph, writes about the problem that people would be shaving hair, and he says it's a big problem. So the Gemara says, we're going to bring in the wood of the Asherah tree. This tree was used for idolatry, and there's a prohibition for you to benefit, to use the wood of an idol for personal use. So if you're making a fire, right, Mr. Haber, if a person makes a fire from a wood of a tree of Avodah Zarah, and that would be prohibited. So that's what the case is. We have a third prohibition happening, and that has nothing to do with Yom Tov. That has to do with a general prohibition of benefiting from Avodah Zarah. So that's why he's going to get another set of lashes. The additional set of lashes, therefore it's going to be a total of 5, 3, so to speak, on the cooking aspect. The 3 on the cooking is cooking on Yom Tov for no purpose, cooking meat and meat together, and heating up. When he lit this fire, he heated up. He used the tree of Avodah Zarah, of idols, for benefit, and therefore he violation is a separate prohibition. The Gemara says, where is the prohibition that a person will get lashes for such a thing? The warning that the Torah says you're not allowed to use the wood of this tree for benefit. Torah says, I don't want anything, nothing, no part of the idol of God bless you, of the Avodah Zarah should be connected to you. And therefore, if you're going to go ahead and take the part of Avodah Zarah and use for personal use, then he is violating this prohibition. And that's why he's going to get a malkut, another set of lashes for that violation that was violated of benefiting from the wood of the idols. So the Gemara says, you know what? There's not just one violation by doing that. There's 2 violations by benefiting from the wood of an idol. Amalei Rav Acha, the Rav Ashi, we're looking. God bless you. Nami mishum lo savi to'eva el beitecha. The Torah says, don't bring an abomination into your house. And what is the abomination? The Avodah Zarah is the abomination. There might be other things today. People bring abominations into the house. Other types of abominations they bring into the house. But that's what the Torah says. When it talks about Avodah Zarah, it throws on another violation, another don't that's counted as a separate violation. If don't bring, but here it doesn't mean the way the Ramban explains in the Ritva, this prohibition, even though it says don't bring it in your house, this particular violation is referring to don't benefit. It's not take. The intent of this violation is not to benefit from the idol, and I presume why the Torah writes it in this way by saying don't bring it into your house is because that's going to ensure you won't benefit from the idol. So sometimes the Torah writes something in a certain way, it gives you the fence to protect from that violation. So you have other psukim in the Torah that says lo yelacha elohim acherim. You shouldn't have any other gods from the 10 commandments. But this particular prohibition, where the Torah says I don't want you to bring into your house, it's referring to not the bringing into your house, That's not what the main intent of this pasuk means. It's referring to don't benefit from the idol, from the idol. And obviously by bringing it into your house, that's going to cause you to lead to benefit from the idol. Like in this week's parasha, the Torah says eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It doesn't mean eye for an eye literally. That's not the intent of the pasuk. It means the value of an eye for an eye. But the Torah writes eye for an eye. It wants to give you a certain lesson that you should learn. Like Rabbi David Feinstein says, good morning, Michael. Rabbi Feinstein said the Torah tells you eye for an eye, and because the Torah wants you to feel, a person should feel if he knocks out someone's eye, his eye is deserved to be knocked out. You knocked out someone's tooth, your tooth. If you look at it that way,
Rabbi, it's this week's parasha.
Right. Yes, if you look at it that way, what do you say, Michael?
There's 8 of them. 8. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, foot for...
Right. Right. So the Torah wants you to feel your eye, person's eye should be knocked out if he knocks out someone's eye. If he feels that way, he'll be more careful when it comes to someone else's eye. A guy is a wealthy person. If you just tell him, you knock out someone's eye, you pay for it. Okay, put it on the credit card. Okay, put it on the credit card. But you tell a guy, you know what, your eye should be knocked out. Whoa, I'm not. I'm going to be a little extra careful when I'm chopping wood together. Maybe one of the pieces, a little piece, splinter might fall, knock out the guy's eye. I'm going to be extra careful. So that's so even though it doesn't mean value, it's you're forbidden. Sorry, it doesn't mean knocking out the eye. You're forbidden to knock out your eye if you knock out someone's eye. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to hit you. You can knock out your own eye. The Torah says eye for an eye. Torah writes things a certain way to teach certain lessons. That's why the Torah writes something, because the Torah was not meant to understand it just by reading the black and white. The Torah was given with an explanation, came with a commentary. It's called the Torah Shabbat Peh, the oral law. Just to have some great people here, everyone's great. I was once in a synagogue not so long ago, and a rabbi who's, I don't believe he has the proper qualifications as a rabbi, he took a verse and he just translated it the way he just read it, and he took it without the proper explanation of the rabbis. And he took the verse out of context, because he looks at the verse without looking at how the rabbis explained the verse, because the Torah was given with explanation, and it was a terrible thing that he did. And I spoke to him privately about it, and I took him to task for just reading a pasuk, reading a verse, and just coming to a conclusion and making a whole speech about it, which I was very upset with the rabbi. Okay, generally rabbis don't do that. Obviously, he's not a rabbi that went to Moshe Feinstein's yeshiva. You know what I'm saying? He's not that type of rabbi. I'm not. I don't want to. You got to be careful.
No one like you, Rabbi. No one like you.
I just want to say we got to be careful who the rabbis are. That's why it's so important who you pick as a rabbi of a synagogue. Okay, the Gemara says
give him Malkut.
He has to do tshuva. Hopefully, he has to do tshuva.
Rabbi, in this Gemara, he would get Malchut.
Okay, very good. So the Gemara says, Ella, the Gemara says, okay, it should be a second violation, the Gemara says. But if the case, it can't be, the Gemara says, that the case is that he heated up the wood of an Asherah of an idol tree, because then he would get 6 sets of lashes total with the other things that he did, not just 5 sets. So the Gemara said
also he lost the mitzvah because you didn't destroy the Asherah tree. You have to destroy that.
Right. Good morning. Yes, true, Michael. But losing the mitzvah will not give him lashes. To do
lashes,
I
got you. Yes.
Right. So the Gemara says, El hacha ma'askinan kigon shebishlo ba'atzei hekdesh. There was wood. Someone donated wood to the Beit HaMikdash, right? The Beit HaMikdash, there was a fire going every day. The Torah says the Torah says about the fire, lo sichbeh, eish tamid tukar al mizbeach, which would be a fire burning all the time on the mizbeach. And the Torah says you're not allowed to take out that fire, right? And it's an amazing idea. I once saw a nice idea in the name of Rav Kook, that he says that every person has a fire. Every person has a fire within. You have to feed that fire constantly with Torah and mitzvot. Lo sichbeh, The Torah gave a prohibition. You're not allowed to take out the fire that's on the Mizbeach. If a person would come and take water and pour the water on the Mizbeach, take out the fire on the Mizbeach, he's in violation. You hear that, Nathan? If a person takes water and pours on the Mizbeach, the Torah forbids it. So he says, if you do anything to yourself to weaken that fire, to put down that fire that you have within you, you are like violating, extinguishing the fire in a certain way. You hear that, Mr. Safdie? Every person has that fire. A person goes to the wrong show, the wrong, watches something he shouldn't be watching, looks at something he shouldn't be doing. He's lowering that fire that he has, that holy fire that he has in. So in a certain sense, he is diminishing that fire that he has inside. And every time we learn and do mitzvot, we are flaming that fire. It's like the Eish Tamid, it's like the Mizbeach. Every person is like a Mizbeach. Every person is like the altar.
That's Chaim Belazhin. Chaim Belazhin talks about that. Nefesh Chaim.
Yes, beautiful. Yes, Ariel. Good. Okay. So the Gemara said, "Ma'aseh Hekdesh," wood that was designated for the Beis Hamikdash, and he went ahead and he used it for personal use. V'azartia mehacha. And how do you know you can't? Where does the Torah warn you? Because we don't give a guy lashes, malkut, unless he was warned from the Torah. The Torah had to tell you, don't do it. The Torah doesn't tell you don't do it, and you do something, there is no lashes. There's no lashes, no malkut, unless the Torah wrote black and white. You're not allowed to do this thing. So the Gemara says, and we warned the guy, right? It says, the asherehem tisrefun be'esh. The Torah says, their asherehem, their idols, you got to burn. You got to burn it. It's interesting, the language, tisrefun be'esh. Generally, tisrefun is be'esh. You usually burn with fire. So it's something to think about why the Torah writes double. Burn it in fire. Say tisrefun be'esh. But lo sasu keim laHashem alakechem. But when things that are connected to Hashem, things that are holy, you're not allowed to go ahead and destroy. The Torah says, I want you to take the idols, I want to take those trees and burn it to the ground, ruin it, burn it to the ground, get rid of the avodah zarah, but don't do this to things that are holy. Lo sasu kein, don't take something that's holy and destroy it. So, and burn it. So therefore, this guy went ahead and he took wood that was consecrated, that was donated for the holy Beit HaMikdash, and he went ahead and he used it for himself. So that's in violation of this prohibition. So now the Gemara goes back to the Mishnah listed 8 lavim, 8 violations that a person could violate by doing the act of plowing. One act of plowing, the Gemara came up with possible 8 violations and possibly eight sets of lashes for this one act of plowing, right? If you recall, the Mishnah stated if the field was a field of Shemitah, it was during the Shemitah year, the 7th year, we are not allowed to work the ground. And it was on Yom Tov. And you plowed on Yom Tov, so that's a violation of violating Yom Tov. It also was Shemitah, you're violating Shemitah. It also, you plowed over an area that they had planted mixed seeds. And now you covered up through the plowing, you covered up the seeds. You violated the prohibition of sowing a mixed seeds together. And the Gemara, and you were plowing with an ox and a donkey. You mixed breed 2 different animals together. You're not allowed to tie 2 different animals together and plow. You could tie 2 oxen together, but you can't take 2 different animals. So in this one act, he was creative in his violation. He violated 8. Mr. Haber, is that clear? In this one act. So the Gemara says, listen, you're starting to tell me, you're starting to count number of violations. So why don't you count? I have other violations that I could think of. If you want to be creative, so why is the Mishnah stopping at 8? I got 9, I got 10, I got 11. I'll show you. Maskefla Rav Hoshea. L'choshev nami, why don't we count Hazareya ben Nachal Eitan? If someone goes ahead and he plans in Nachal Eitan. Now, what is Nachal Eitan? Nachal Eitan, the Torah talks about the story of Egla Rufa. If you find somebody was murdered and you don't know who murdered the guy, so the Torah says there's a whole procession. We take 5 of the greatest rabbis
From
Yerushalayim, from the Sanhedrin of the 71 rabbis, and they come to measure which city is closest to where the dead body was. Once they measure which city was closest, they go back home, and then the elders, the rabbis, the chachamim of that city that was the closest city where the person was killed, they take over. And there's a whole procession that the question is, they have to say a declaration that we're not responsible for the death of this person. Because if this guy came to our town, we as leaders have responsibility to make sure that people are given a proper food, proper escort when they leave the city. And they say, we didn't kill the guy. I mean, the question, wait, you think they killed him? If you could have prevented his death, in the eyes of the Torah, it's like you killed the guy, right? That's how the Torah looks at things. It's a different outlook of things. What you did, Rabbi, what you could have done. Yes.
Yosef sent a message back to Yaakov that he was an Egla Arufa, that he was lost in the field. And that was the idea when he sent back the message to Yaakov. That's the sugya they were on, but it was also what happened in his life.
Right, that's true. But and Michael's also alluded to a famous chazal that the last thing that Yosef learned with his father was Egla Rufa, this story. And when Yosef wanted to tell his father, I'm still alive, Yosef was concerned that he would not believe that Yosef is alive. So Yosef says, tell dad, remind him, the last thing we learned 22 years ago was this story of Egla Rufa. And as Michael is saying, and Michael's adding to that, Mr. Silverman is adding, Yosef's life was like an Egla Rufa. He was like the guy that was killed, that no one knew who killed him, in a certain sense. I mean, Yaakov thought that he was ripped apart, but whatever. But getting back to our point over here. So the Torah says we need a kapara, we need an atonement for this death, this tragedy that a Jewish person's life was cut short. He was killed. So, and we don't know who killed him. And part of the idea the Sefer Chinuch says is we want to find the murderer. So when the 5 great rabbis come to town, everybody comes out. Imagine Rav Ovadia Yosef is coming, Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Nassim Abba Shaul. The greatest rabbis on earth are coming to town. Everybody's coming out to greet them. Hey, why are they rabbis coming? Oh, you know why they're coming? Because there was a murder. Maybe we know something about it. Maybe we can figure something out. And therefore, that possibly could help find the murderer. But more than that, the focus of the pasuk is focusing on kapara. We need atonement for this death. So what do? They take an egel, they take a calf that never worked a day in its life, never produced any fruit, and you go to a rocky area. Nachal Eitan is a very rocky area, an area that's very difficult to plant, very difficult to and the Torah says, go to that, take that area and chop off the head of this calf, and that should atone for the death. The death of this calf will atone for the death of this person whose life was cut short. And the Torah says another thing. I don't want you ever to work and sow this rocky area where you chopped off the head of the golden calf, of this calf. And what's the reason perhaps behind it? Because we have to remember this tragedy forever. That this person was not able to be productive. And that's such a tragedy. Every person that when they're alive, they have such opportunity to be productive and do mitzvot, do great things. And this person was not able to be productive. So therefore, this area that would never be able to be productive forever. The Sefer Chinuch says that if you could identify such a spot in the Holy Land that they did this Egla Aruva, you would not be able to plant there or work that area today in Israel. You would have to corner it off and say off limits. But we don't know of such a place, that we can't identify it. Therefore, you go after majority. And most places in Israel don't have such a situation. Therefore, you could plant and plow anywhere in Israel. But that's the story. So now, what happened if he plowed? If a guy plows today in the place of this rocky area where they did the Egel Arufa, that would be a violation. And that would carry with lashes, because the Torah says, I want you to remember this tragedy forever. I've said when I would speak on that parasha and Shoftim, I would say there are a lot of people that voluntarily create the same tragedy for themselves. The tragedy, one of the great tragedies of the death of this person when they passed away young, is they lost opportunity to be productive as a Jew. They lost all those mitzvot that they could have done. That potential was lost. But look how many Jews signed themselves up for that same tragedy. They're alive, but they're dead in a certain sense. They're like this guy because they're not doing mitzvot. So we have to realize the tragedy. If we realize the tragedy, maybe we will do something to help them and to help inspire them to come back. So the Gemara says,
Rabbi, we read the parash. We read in before we learn Mishnah Gemara. We read that pasuk. Yiratzon mevenecha Adonai Elohai shelo yirad davar tchala al yidei velo akasher davar halacha. V'yismechu chaverai velo omar atamehed tahor velo atamehed.
But that is that I don't want anything. I shouldn't make a mistake, and I don't want my friend.
The next one, sorry, the next one, the one after we pray, we say that they're sleeping and we're learning.
Right, exactly. So the Gemara says, why don't we count that as a violation? We have number 9. He plowed. The area that he plowed was not only was it Shemitah, not only was it Yom Tov, it was also the area was a place of Nachal Eitan. And because he plowed in that area, we have a 9th violation. Then the Gemara says, Masur Chananya, Lichoshev Nami Hamuches Hashem Avichato. The Gemara is going to say we have more cases, and we're going to see about it on Monday to be continued. Other cases that he might be violating more sins in one act of this plowing. Stay tuned. We want to wish everyone a beautiful Shabbat.
Shalom, Rabbi.
And all the best to everybody.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
You too, Shabbat shalom. You too. All the best. Thank you so much.
Shabbat shalom.
Say it again. The pasuk, yes, the pasuk says lo sichber. You can't take out the fire. So if you put water on the fire, you have taken out the fire. Is that a beautiful idea? You like that idea? Yeah. I guess we gotta make sure. Very good. Thank you. You too, Mr. David. Thank you very much.